You're overthinking again, Clara, Ethan said, not even glancing up from his laptop as he slid a perfectly folded shirt into his suitcase. His tone was calm, but distant, too distant. My name is Clara Hayes, 34 years old, living what most would call a picture-perfect life in Austin, Texas. My husband, Ethan, is a senior sales director for Neurovia Pharmaceuticals, and his job keeps him traveling more often than he's home. I work as a freelance interior designer, spending my days turning empty spaces into something beautiful. For the past 7 years, I believed we had balance, trust, affection, shared goals. We weren't perfect, but we were stable. Or so I thought. Lately, though, the cracks were showing. Ethan had become glued to his phone, stepping outside to take calls that weren't important. His trips grew longer, and when I offered to join him for one, his reaction was sharper than expected. "This isn't some getaway, Clara," he said last week when I suggested tagging along to his Santa Fe conference. "It's work. I'll be in meetings all day. You'd just be stuck in a hotel room." That sentence stayed with me, echoing louder each night. We used to laugh during road trips, make spontaneous detours, explore hidden towns. Now, even the idea of traveling together seemed to irritate him. As he zipped his sleek black suitcase that Thursday morning, I noticed he'd packed his favorite navy suit, the one he wore only for client galas or formal events. Strange. For a medical conference, that seemed excessive. "Which hotel again?" I asked casually, pretending to look through some magazines. "The Blue Ridge Resort, same as last time," he replied smoothly, still not looking at me. I smiled faintly. "Right. And you'll be back Sunday?" "Late Sunday. Don't wait up." His words stung. There was no warmth in them, no trace of the man who once called me every hour when he was away. Just a flat statement from someone who seemed eager to leave. When his car finally disappeared down the street, the silence inside our house grew heavy. I tried to work, but every brushstroke on my design tablet felt pointless. Something wasn't right. Ethan's movements, his tone, even the way he avoided eye contact, it all screamed secrets. That night, unable to sleep, I searched the Blue Ridge Resort online. It looked elegant, professional, nothing suspicious. Yet deep inside, something told me the truth wasn't hiding in plain sight. It was hiding behind a lie. And for the first time in our marriage, I decided to find out what that lie was. What I didn't know was that this business trip would uncover not only Ethan's betrayal, but a web of deceit that would destroy far more than just our marriage. Friday morning arrived with a strange heaviness in the air. I woke up before sunrise, restless and uneasy. The empty side of the bed, where Ethan usually slept, looked too perfect, cold and untouched, as though he'd been gone far longer than a single night. I tried to shake the feeling by brewing coffee and turning on some music, but every melody seemed to echo the same question in my mind. What is he really doing in Santa Fe? Ethan had always been meticulous, a creature of routine. But that same precision had started to feel calculated. He'd changed his phone password a few weeks ago, claiming it was for work security. His credit card statements had become shorter, less detailed, since he'd switched to electronic receipts. I used to admire his discipline. Now it scared me. After pacing the kitchen for an hour, I decided to check the mail before heading to my studio. Buried between bills and advertisements was an envelope addressed to Ethan from Blue Ridge Resort, postmarked 2 days earlier. My pulse quickened. The paper inside was a printed confirmation, not for a corporate conference, but for a romantic weekend package. 2 guests. Private villa. Couples massage. Complimentary champagne. My knees almost gave out. I stared at the words, unable to believe what I was seeing. There had to be a mistake. Maybe it was an automated offer or a promotional letter. But the reservation number, the check-in date, it matched exactly. Thursday. Yesterday. The day Ethan left. I read the page again, my hands trembling so badly that the paper crinkled. My first thought wasn't even betrayal. It was disbelief. This couldn't be him. Ethan wasn't reckless. He was cautious to the point of obsession. If he was lying, he'd be careful. Unless he didn't think he needed to hide anymore. I folded the paper, slipped it into my desk drawer, and sat there in silence. My mind was racing, switching between denial and rage. If Ethan was cheating, he'd underestimated me, badly. After all, I was trained to see patterns, to notice small inconsistencies others ignored. That's what design was all about: balance, proportion, harmony. And right now, my marriage was none of those things. That afternoon, I packed a small bag, tucked the letter inside, and opened my laptop. I looked up the fastest route to Santa Fe. 3.5 hours. By sunset, I was on the road. But as the city lights faded behind me and the desert opened wide ahead, I had no idea that the truth waiting in Santa Fe would be far darker and far more dangerous than infidelity. The drive to Santa Fe was long but strangely hypnotic. The desert stretched endlessly on both sides, the golden light fading into violet shadows. My thoughts kept looping, replaying Ethan's words, his expressions, the way he avoided my eyes that morning. Every mile I drove, the pieces fit together in darker ways. The secretive phone calls, the perfectly pressed suit, the reservation for two. I told myself I just wanted clarity, not confrontation. But deep down, I knew the truth would not be kind. By the time I reached the Blue Ridge Resort, the sky had turned deep indigo. The property was breathtaking, rows of adobe villas surrounded by palm trees and amber lights. I parked near the lobby, palms slick with sweat despite the cool air. Inside, the atmosphere was elegant but relaxed, filled with soft music and faint floral perfume. A young receptionist greeted me with a polite smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to Blue Ridge Resort. Do you have a reservation?" "I'm actually looking for my husband," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Ethan Hayes. He should have checked in yesterday." She typed on her computer, eyes flicking across the screen. "Yes, Mr. Hayes is staying in Villa 214. My stomach tightened. "He's registered alone?" The woman hesitated. "His reservation lists 2 guests. My heart stopped for a moment, then raced so fast it hurt. I thanked her quietly and made my way down the softly lit path toward the villas. Villa 214 was at the far end, partially hidden by tall desert plants. The door was slightly ajar, a strip of warm light spilling out onto the walkway. I froze. I could hear faint laughter inside, a woman's laughter. I stepped closer, my pulse pounding in my ears. A shadow moved behind the sheer curtains, then another. 2 figures, silhouettes against the light. For a moment, my body refused to move. The sound of clinking glasses floated through the air, followed by Ethan's voice, low, familiar, and intimate. He wasn't at a conference. He wasn't working. My entire world tilted. The paper in my pocket suddenly felt like a weight dragging me under. I turned away, my breath trembling, but before I could retreat, the villa door opened slightly wider. A woman's voice called softly, "Ethan, who's out there?" I stepped back into the shadows, heart hammering. He answered, laughing lightly, "Probably just the wind." But as I watched from the darkness, I saw something that changed everything, something that proved Ethan's lies went far beyond an affair. I stood frozen in the shadows outside Villa 214, my heart hammering against my ribs. The laughter from inside had softened into low voices, indistinct but intimate. Every instinct told me to leave, to run back to my car and drive away before I shattered completely. But something inside me refused to move. Through the thin crack between the curtains, I saw Ethan walk into view. He was barefoot, wearing a white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his hair slightly tousled. He looked relaxed, too relaxed. And then she appeared. The woman was young, maybe in her mid-20s, with dark hair cascading over her shoulders. She carried a wine glass and smiled up at him with an ease that burned straight through me. Ethan leaned closer, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and kissed her like a man who had no secrets left to hide. I couldn't breathe. My hands gripped the wall beside me, fingers digging into the rough plaster. It wasn't just the kiss, it was how familiar he looked doing it, like this wasn't new. Like this had been happening for a long time. Tears blurred my vision, but I couldn't pull myself away. The woman said something that made him laugh, the same low laugh he used to reserve for me. Then, he turned toward a table near the window. On it sat two open folders, a laptop, and what looked like stacks of printed documents. That's when something strange caught my eye. The papers weren't romantic getaway plans. They looked like contracts, official and stamped. Ethan picked one up, handed it to the woman, and pointed at a section near the bottom. She nodded, slipped the papers into a slim leather portfolio, and placed it inside her purse. A cold realization began to creep through me. This wasn't just an affair, it was business. Ethan said something about the transfer being complete by Monday and the data needing to stay off the system. The woman smiled again, but her tone changed, professional, sharp. I pressed a hand to my mouth, the weight of what I was witnessing settling in. This wasn't only betrayal, it was something bigger, something dangerous. I took a single step back, my mind racing. I had come here expecting to find proof of infidelity. Instead, I might have stumbled into something far worse. As I turned to leave, headlights flashed across the path, another car pulling up near the villa. And when the driver stepped out, I recognized him instantly, someone who should never have been there. The headlights blinded me for a moment. I ducked behind a row of trimmed desert shrubs, my heart thudding so loudly I was sure someone would hear it. The car door slammed, and footsteps crunched against the gravel. When my eyes adjusted, I saw him clearly, Mr. Langford, Ethan's regional director at Neurovia Pharmaceuticals. I'd met him once at a company dinner. He was the kind of man who exuded quiet authority, tailored suit, precise movements, a polite smile that never reached his eyes. What was he doing here? Langford walked briskly toward the villa, glancing over his shoulder before knocking twice on the door. Ethan opened it almost immediately, and the two men exchanged a quick handshake. Too casual, too practiced. The young woman greeted him with a nod and poured another glass of wine. I crouched lower, the cold desert air biting my skin. The three of them moved toward the table, where those same folders still lay open. Through the window, I could see Ethan slide a flash drive across the table. Langford picked it up, examined it briefly, and slipped it into his jacket pocket. My blood ran cold. They weren't just having an affair, they were doing something that looked suspiciously like a transfer. I couldn't hear every word, but snippets reached me through the half-open window. The reports are complete, confidential batch trial data. No one outside the team knows. We'll settle the rest once it's verified. It wasn't romantic talk. It was corporate, calculated, dangerous. I pressed my phone to the glass and snapped a few photos before my hands started shaking too much to continue. The flash was off, thank God. Still, my breath came out in sharp, uneven bursts. Langford's voice carried clearer now. If this leaks, Ethan, we're both finished. You understand? Ethan nodded. It won't. She doesn't suspect a thing. A chill shot through me.
She.
He meant me. I backed away slowly, every instinct screaming to run. But a part of me, cold and deliberate, forced me to stay quiet, to observe. Whatever this was, it was far more dangerous than adultery. If Ethan was selling confidential data, he wasn't just betraying me, he was breaking the law. When Langford finally left, the woman followed him out, glancing nervously around before they disappeared into the night. Ethan closed the door, unaware that his entire life was now unraveling in the shadows outside his villa. I thought I'd seen enough, but when I checked the photos on my phone, one small detail in the corner of the frame made my blood freeze. It wasn't just business. It was proof of something criminal. I ducked behind my car, hands shaking as I opened the photos on my phone. The images were dark but clear enough to show Ethan, the woman, and Mr. Langford sitting around that table with the folders and wine glasses. But in the last photo, taken just before they noticed the sound outside, a small reflection in the window caught my attention. At first, I thought it was just glare from the light. Then I zoomed in. Behind Ethan, reflected in the glass, was a corporate document, clearly marked with the Neurovia Pharmaceuticals logo and the word, confidential, property of research division. My breath caught. Ethan wasn't just meeting his boss and a woman. He was transferring company research files. My pulse pounded in my ears. My husband was committing corporate theft, and I had photographic proof. I leaned back against the car, the realization crashing over me like a wave. This was no longer about betrayal and marriage, it was about crime. Ethan could go to prison for this. And if I wasn't careful, I could get dragged down with him. For a moment, I considered confronting him right there, storming into that villa, and demanding answers. But instinct told me not to. If he could hide this from me for months, maybe years, then I had no idea what he was capable of when cornered. Instead, I took a deep breath, saved the photos to a secure cloud drive, and started the car. I needed time to think, to plan. I couldn't act out of emotion. Not yet. The road out of the resort was silent except for the hum of the tires against the pavement. I drove for nearly half an hour before pulling over at a small gas station on the outskirts of town. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by a sharp, cold focus. If Ethan was selling confidential data, that meant there were records, emails, transfers, something tangible that could prove it beyond doubt. I had access to his home office, his files, even his work laptop when he left it behind. I realized then what I needed to do. This wasn't the end of my discovery. It was just the beginning of my investigation. As I stared at the final photo again, something else caught my eye, something I'd missed before. On the table beside the documents lay a black keycard, stamped with a symbol I didn't recognize. And I knew instantly that key didn't belong to Neurovia. The drive back to Austin felt longer than before. The highway stretched endlessly under the moonlight, my thoughts twisting into darker shapes with every passing mile. I replayed the scene in that villa again and again, the flash drive, the contracts, the way Ethan smiled like nothing was wrong. By the time I reached home, dawn was breaking. The house looked the same as always, peaceful, ordinary, a portrait of stability. But now I knew better. The walls that once felt like safety were nothing more than a cover for lies. I sat in the driveway for several minutes before stepping out. My hands were trembling, not from fear anymore, but from determination. I wasn't going to confront Ethan yet. I needed to gather everything, proof, dates, connections. If he was part of something illegal, I wanted the truth documented before he even suspected I knew. Inside, the faint smell of his cologne lingered. His home office door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly, half expecting alarms to go off. The room was spotless, almost unnervingly so. Ethan had always been organized, but this was different, sterile, deliberate. His laptop wasn't there, of course. He always took it on trips. But the desktop computer was still on the corner desk, its blue light pulsing faintly. I hesitated, then sat down. His password used to be my birthday. I tried it, and to my shock, it worked. The screen came alive with neatly labeled folders, client data, research notes, trial reports. Some were encrypted, others open. I clicked one labeled Conference Docs. Inside were PDFs of presentations, charts, and meeting minutes, ordinary things. But buried in a subfolder called Archive_214, something caught my eye. A file dated 3 days ago, titled Final_Transfer_Log. I opened it. Rows of numbers filled the screen, shipment codes, file hashes, and what looked like internal Neurovia identifiers. At the bottom of the document was a short note. Delivery confirmed. Compensation pending. Keycard to remain secured. That same word, keycard. My stomach tightened. It was the same black card I'd seen in the photo, the one with the unknown symbol. Whatever Ethan was doing, it was coordinated, and bigger than I imagined. I printed the file quietly, folded it into a brown envelope, and tucked it inside my bag. Then I heard it, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Tires crunching on gravel. Ethan was home. Early. And as his silhouette appeared through the frosted glass of the front door, I realized something terrifying. He wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday night. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. The sound of the car engine shutting off outside echoed in my chest like a warning. I glanced at the clock. 7:42 a.m. Ethan wasn't supposed to be home for almost 2 more days. My heart pounded as his footsteps approached the front door. I barely had time to minimize the open document and pull the printed page from the printer tray before the key turned in the lock. I shoved the envelope into my sketchbook drawer and sat down at the kitchen counter, pretending to sip cold coffee. The door creaked open. Clara? Ethan's voice was calm, almost casual. In here, I called out, trying to sound surprised, but not too surprised. He walked in wearing the same navy suit from the trip, jacket slung over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. There was no sign of guilt, no sign of panic. Only calculation. "You're up early," he said, dropping his keys into the bowl by the door. I couldn't sleep. He smiled faintly. "Still worrying too much?" The same phrase he always used whenever I was close to catching him in a lie. I clenched my jaw and forced a small laugh. "Maybe." He studied me for a moment, then poured himself a glass of water. The silence was unbearable. Every movement he made felt deliberate, controlled. "Conference ended early," he said finally, his back to me. "We wrapped up ahead of schedule, so I thought I'd surprise you." The irony almost made me choke. "Surprise me?" "Oh," I managed. "That's nice." He turned, eyes locking on mine. For a brief moment, I thought I saw something flicker behind his calm, suspicion. His gaze dropped to my hands resting on the counter. They were still trembling. "You okay?" he asked slowly. I nodded. "Just tired." He leaned against the counter, watching me too closely. "You didn't happen to check my office while I was gone, did you?" The question hit like a blade. I froze. "Why would I?" He shrugged, a faint smile playing on his lips. "No reason. Just making sure." His tone was light, but his eyes weren't. They were sharp, assessing, almost predatory. He finished his water, set the glass down, and turned toward the hallway. "I'm going to shower. We can have breakfast after." As he disappeared from sight, I finally exhaled the breath I'd been holding. My knees felt weak, but my mind was racing faster than ever. Because as he closed the bathroom door upstairs, I heard the faint buzz of his phone on the counter, and the message preview flashing across the screen read, "Delivery incomplete. Need update. Use keycard." My pulse raced as I stared at Ethan's phone buzzing on the counter. The screen lit up again, and the same message appeared for the second time. "Delivery incomplete. Need update. Use keycard." The sender's name was hidden, just a string of numbers, no contact names saved. My throat went dry. I glanced toward the stairs. The shower had just started running. I had maybe 5 minutes. With trembling fingers, I picked up the phone. Of course, it was locked. I tried my birthday, the same code he'd used for his computer, but it didn't work. I tried our anniversary date, no luck. Think, Clara. Think. Then I remembered something. He once mentioned using the last digits of our old house number for his phone passcode when he kept forgetting. I entered 4628. The screen unlocked. A mix of adrenaline and guilt flooded through me. I opened his messages. Most were ordinary. Work updates, travel reminders, emails forwarded from Eurovia. But the conversation with the unknown number stood out, pinned to the top. There were dozens of messages over the past few months. Code-like phrases. Phase 2 approved. Confirm handoff location. Payment split confirmed. Each signed only with a single initial. L. Langford. Scrolling faster, I reached the most recent one, sent just this morning at 7:18 a.m. Delivery incomplete. Need update. Use keycard. Below it, Ethan's last message from last night read, "We'll finalize in person before Sunday. Data secured." My blood ran cold. He wasn't done. Whatever this delivery was, it was still happening, and I had interrupted it. The sound of the shower stopped upstairs. Panic surged. I quickly placed the phone back exactly where it had been and grabbed a random magazine to look natural. A few seconds later, Ethan came down the stairs, hair damp, shirt half-buttoned. He smiled faintly when he saw me. "Still quiet around here, huh?" I forced a small smile. "Yeah, just catching up on emails." He poured himself another glass of water, then picked up his phone. For a second, his thumb hovered over the screen. His expression shifted, barely noticeable, but real. Suspicion. "Everything okay?" I asked, pretending to sound casual. He looked at me for a long moment before finally nodding. "Yeah, everything's fine." But his tone told a different story. That night, After he fell asleep beside me, I waited until his breathing slowed, and then I took the black keycard from his jacket pocket. Whatever he was hiding, the answers were on that card. The black keycard felt heavier than it should have. Its surface was smooth, matte, and unmarked except for a faint silver symbol at the top, a triangle intersected by a circle. It didn't look like a hotel card or a company badge. It looked secretive. I sat in the dim light of my studio, the clock reading 1:13 a.m. Ethan was asleep upstairs, his slow, even breathing echoing faintly through the quiet house. My hands trembled as I turned the card over. On the back, in tiny letters, were the words, "Property of Orion Access Systems." I didn't recognize the name, but something about it made my stomach tighten. It sounded like a front, a company that existed only on paper. I powered on my laptop and searched the name. Most results were vague, mentions of security firms, encrypted servers, data storage. But one result stood out. Orion Access Systems, contractor to Neurovia Pharmaceuticals, confidential division. My breath caught. So it was connected. Ethan's business trips, the confidential files, the flash drive, all of it tied to this shadow company. I reached for the small external card reader I used for client security badges. I wasn't sure if it would even register, but when I slid the black card into the slot, a small light blinked green. A single file appeared on my screen. Access_log, dat. My heart pounded as I opened it. The document contained timestamps, entry codes, and building names, most unfamiliar. But one line stood out near the bottom. Entry: Blue Ridge Research Annex. Authorized by E. Hayes. Access time: Thursday, 10:47 p.m. Thursday. The same night he left for the conference. So the Blue Ridge Resort wasn't just a hotel. It was also a research annex for Neurovia's private operations. Ethan hadn't gone there for romance or rest. He'd gone there to hand over data, probably in exchange for money. I saved the file, encrypted it, and backed it up to an external drive. Every new discovery deepened the danger. Ethan wasn't just lying. He was involved in something that could destroy both of us. I slid the keycard back into his jacket pocket just before dawn, my heart hammering as I heard him stir. When he turned in his sleep, his hand brushed my arm, and I flinched. The next morning, as sunlight poured into the kitchen, Ethan looked at me and smiled. "I had the strangest dream," he said softly. "In it, you were watching me." My breath caught when Ethan said those words. I had the strangest dream. In it, you were watching me. It shouldn't have meant anything. People say strange things after restless nights. But there was something in his tone, too deliberate, too careful, that sent a shiver crawling down my spine. I forced a light laugh. "Well, maybe your subconscious is feeling guilty about something." He smiled, but his eyes didn't. "Maybe." He sipped his coffee, watching me over the rim of the mug. I looked away, pretending to scroll through my phone, but my pulse was racing. He couldn't possibly know I'd taken the keycard last night, or could he? I kept my movement steady, normal. "You heading to the office today?" "Not yet," he said, setting the mug down. "I have to make a few calls first." Some last-minute reports came in. Reports. Always reports. Always the perfect excuse. I stood, carrying my empty cup to the sink, and noticed his jacket draped carelessly over the back of the chair. The same one I'd slipped the keycard into hours earlier. My fingers twitched. The card was gone. My heart stopped. I turned, trying not to reveal the panic spreading through me. Ethan's phone buzzed again on the counter. He glanced at it briefly before locking the screen and sliding it into his pocket. "Another work message?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Yeah," he replied, his tone unreadable. "They never stop." He picked up his briefcase and paused by the doorway. "You sure you're okay? You seem off." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." He lingered for a moment longer, eyes fixed on me, then nodded slowly. "I'll be back later tonight." When the door finally closed behind him, I let out a trembling breath. My mind was spinning. He knew. Somehow, he knew I'd touched that card. I rushed to my studio and opened my laptop. The file from last night, the access log, was still there. But when I clicked it, an error message flashed across the screen. File corrupted. Access denied. He had wiped it remotely. He was covering his tracks. And if he could do that, it meant he wasn't working alone. That afternoon, an unmarked envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was a single printed note that read, "Stop looking. You're already in danger." I stared at the note in my hands, the words blurring as my pulse thundered in my ears. "Stop looking. You're already in danger." It wasn't typed in a corporate font or scrawled hastily. It was printed neatly, precise, impersonal. Whoever sent it wanted me to know they were serious. I scanned the street outside, through the living room blinds. The morning sun cast long shadows across the driveway, the air still and quiet. But something about that silence felt unnatural, too deliberate, like the calm before a storm. No vehicles lingered, no unfamiliar faces. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. I placed the note on the table and snapped a photo of it. Then I opened my laptop again, desperate to salvage anything from the corrupted file. Every attempt led to the same response. Access denied. It was gone. Ethan had erased it completely. I opened the photo of the note again and zoomed in. At the bottom right corner, faint but visible under the printed letters, was a watermark. Orion Access Systems. They knew. Whoever Orion really was, they knew I had opened their card, accessed their file, and seen too much. I paced the room, trying to think rationally. Calling the police wasn't an option. What could I even tell them? My husband is part of a secret data transfer network, and I got an anonymous threat from his company. They'd think I was paranoid. I needed proof, solid, undeniable proof. That meant finding someone outside the company who knew about Orion. Someone who could tell me what Ethan was truly involved in. I remembered a name from one of Ethan's old business dinners. Dr. Helen Rivas, a former Neurovia researcher who'd suddenly resigned 2 years ago. I'd overheard Ethan say she didn't understand the bigger picture. Maybe she did, and maybe that's why she left. I searched for her online. Nothing recent, no interviews, no updates, no LinkedIn profile. But after digging through archived forums, I found a mention of her name tied to a local research ethics group based right here in Austin. My heart leapt. She hadn't vanished. She was still here. I wrote down the address listed for the group's office and slipped the note into my purse. I'd find her. Today. But as I reached for my keys, my phone buzzed. A new message appeared from an unknown number. "He's watching you too." I froze, staring at the message as the realization sank in. Whoever was sending these warnings wasn't trying to scare me away, they were trying to save me. I drove across town with the note folded tightly in my hand, my mind replaying that last text. "He's watching you too." Every stoplight, every passing car, felt like a potential threat. The address led me to an old brick building tucked between a row of cafes and a closed bookstore. A small brass plaque by the entrance read, "Central Ethics Research Group." Below it, in smaller letters, Dr. Helen Rivas, Director. Relief mixed with fear. She was real. I parked, checked the street one last time, and went inside. The reception area was quiet, lined with faded posters about medical integrity and scientific transparency. A young assistant greeted me politely, asking if I had an appointment. "I don't," I admitted. "But it's urgent. Please, tell Dr. Rivas that it's about Neurovia Pharmaceuticals." The assistant's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded and disappeared down the hall. A few minutes later, a woman in her early 50s appeared, tall, sharp-eyed, with streaks of silver in her dark hair. "Mrs. Hayes," she asked softly, "come in." Her office was simple, but filled with stacks of research binders and old journals. She gestured for me to sit. "Now tell me, what brings you here?" I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "It's about my husband. He works for Neurovia. I think he's involved with something called Orion Access Systems." At the mention of that name, her expression changed instantly. Her calm exterior cracked, replaced by something like fear. She leaned forward. "Where did you hear that?" "I found it on a card, connected to his work. And I've been getting messages, warnings." Dr. Rivas exhaled slowly, her voice dropping. You need to be very careful, Mrs. Hayes. Orion isn't a company. It's a security shell Neurovia uses to conceal off-record research. When I worked there, they started transferring experimental data to private buyers. I tried to expose it. Her eyes darkened. That's why I left. And that's why people started disappearing. My chest tightened. Disappearing? She nodded grimly. Anyone who got too close, or asked too many questions. If your husband's involved, he's either part of the operation or trying to escape it. Her words struck me like thunder. Before I could respond, her office phone rang. She reached to answer, but froze mid-motion, eyes locked on the small window behind me. Mrs. Hayes, she whispered. Did anyone follow you here? I turned toward the glass and froze. Outside, parked across the street, was Ethan's car. And in the driver's seat, staring directly at us through the window, was my husband. For a moment, everything froze. The world outside that small office window shrank until there was nothing left but the car and the man inside it. Ethan sat behind the wheel, motionless. His hands rested on the steering wheel, his face half hidden in shadow. But even through the tinted glass, I could feel the weight of his gaze. My pulse quickened. It's him, I whispered. That's my husband. Dr. Rivas moved quietly to the side of the window, keeping out of sight. Her expression hardened. You said he wasn't supposed to know you were here. He wasn't, I said, my voice trembling. He was at work, or at least he said he was. She peeked through the blinds again. Then he followed you. I felt my stomach twist. The realization hit hard. Ethan wasn't just watching me. He was tracking me. Dr. Rivas grabbed her phone. We need to move. He can't see you leave through the front. There's a back exit near the archives. I nodded, following her through a narrow hallway lined with filing cabinets and flickering lights. My hands were cold, my breath shallow. As we reached the exit door, she stopped suddenly. Listen to me carefully, she said, her tone low but urgent. If he's working with Orion, you can't confront him. Not now. You need evidence. Something they can't erase. I already had some, I whispered. He deleted it. She nodded grimly. Then we'll find more. I can help you, but not from here. Go home. Act normal. Don't let him know you've spoken to me. I'll contact you when it's safe. I hesitated. What if he comes inside? Her eyes flicked toward the window. Then you run. I slipped out the back door into a narrow alley. The sun was already lowering, stretching long shadows between the buildings. I walked fast, trying not to look behind me, but every sound, every echo of footsteps, made my skin crawl. When I finally reached my car, my hands were shaking so badly that I fumbled the keys. I glanced in the rearview mirror before starting the engine. Ethan's car was gone. For a moment, I allowed myself to breathe until my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number flashed across the screen. You shouldn't have gone to her. My throat tightened. I looked around, but no one was there. The street was empty, silent. And then, through the mirror, I saw a reflection in my back seat, a shadow, barely moving. Someone was inside the car with me. My breath hitched. The reflection in the rearview mirror barely moved, but I could see it, someone sitting in the back seat. My body went cold. I didn't turn around. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my hands were locked on the steering wheel. Don't scream, a low voice said from behind me. I froze. The voice was calm, controlled, nothing like Ethan's. I'm not here to hurt you, the stranger said. But you need to listen very carefully. You don't have much time. My mouth was dry. Who are you? Someone who used to work for them. For Orion. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then why are you in my car? Because you're already in the middle of something you don't understand, he said quietly. And if you keep digging the way you have been, they'll come for you next. I risked a glance in the mirror. He was wearing a dark jacket, a cap pulled low over his face. I couldn't see his eyes, only the faint glint of a scar along his jaw. What do you mean they'll come for me? I whispered. He leaned forward slightly. They've been watching you since the night you accessed the keycard. That message you got, stop looking, that wasn't a warning from Orion. That was from me. My stomach twisted. So, you're the one sending me messages?
Yes.
And the one you just got, you shouldn't have gone to her. That wasn't me. That means they've already traced you to Rivas. Panic clawed at my throat. Dr. Rivas, she's in danger? He hesitated. If she's not gone yet, she will be soon. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white. What do they want from Ethan? What are they using him for? Ethan isn't just a part of this, the man said, his tone darkening. He's their handler. He's been overseeing every transfer. You were never supposed to find out. My world tilted. The air around me seemed to vanish. You're lying. He shook his head. Check his accounts. Offshore transfers. Hidden crypto ledgers. You'll see for yourself. But don't do it from your house. They're already monitoring your network. I turned to face him fully, but the seat was empty. My breath caught again. The car door hadn't opened. There had been no sound. He was gone. And on the passenger seat, where there had been nothing before, lay a small flash drive. When I picked it up, a note appeared beneath it, handwritten, small and precise. For your eyes only. Don't trust anyone, not even him. The flash drive lay in my palm, its metallic surface cool against my skin. For a long moment, I just stared at it, terrified to plug it in yet unable to let go. The handwritten note. For your eyes only. Don't trust anyone, not even him. Burned in my mind. I drove home in silence, checking my mirrors constantly, half expecting Ethan's car to appear again. It didn't. Still, the feeling of being followed clung to me like static. When I reached the house, the evening light had dimmed into amber. Ethan wasn't home yet. I locked every door, closed the blinds, and sat at my desk with my laptop. I hesitated. What if the drive was a trap? A virus? Or worse, what if it was being tracked? But curiosity won. I plugged it in. For a second, nothing happened. Then a single folder appeared on the screen. Project Nexus. My fingers trembled as I clicked it open. Inside were dozens of encrypted files, except for one video. Its title, Blue Ridge, Transfer Footage. I pressed play. The screen flickered, showing grainy security camera footage. A dimly lit lab. Men in suits. Medical equipment humming softly. A glass chamber in the center of the room, something inside it. I leaned closer. The figure inside wasn't moving. It looked human. The video zoomed in slightly, focusing on a clipboard held by one of the technicians. I paused the footage and read the text on the clipboard. Subject 07B. Neural Data Extraction. Authorized by E. Hayes. My breath stopped. Ethan's name. The next frame showed him. My husband, standing in that same room, wearing a lab coat, handing over a small black drive. His expression was calm, cold, detached. I watched in horror as the men nodded and sealed the chamber. There was a brief flash of light, a sound like static, and the screen cut to black. I sat frozen, unable to process what I had just seen. Ethan wasn't just part of this, he was leading it. Then suddenly my laptop screen flickered again. A message appeared across the display, typed in white letters against the black background. We know you watched it. My heart pounded as the message repeated 3 times. Then the screen went dark. Every light in the house flickered. And from somewhere downstairs, I heard the front door unlock. I grabbed the flash drive and ran for the back exit, but as I reached the hallway, a voice called softly from the shadows. Put it down, Claire. My body froze at the sound of that voice. Put it down, Claire. It came from the end of the hallway, low, controlled, and unmistakably familiar. Ethan stepped into the light, his silhouette tall and calm, as if nothing about this moment was unusual. He looked exactly as he always did after work, shirt sleeves rolled up, expression unreadable. But his eyes were different. Cold. Focused. Where were you tonight? He asked softly. I clutched the flash drive tighter. At the studio. He tilted his head slightly, studying me. You're lying. The silence between us thickened until it felt like the air itself was closing in. The lights flickered once more, humming faintly overhead. I took a step back. Ethan, what is this? What's Project Nexus? What are you doing? He didn't answer right away. He just smiled, a small, almost pitying smile. You shouldn't have gone digging, Claire. You were supposed to trust me. Trust you. My voice cracked. I saw the video. I saw you, what you did in that lab. You're not who I thought you were.
His jaw tightened.
You don't understand what you saw. That footage was controlled. It's part of something bigger. Bigger? I snapped. You're extracting data from people. Human beings. He sighed softly, stepping closer. They volunteered. Every subject knew what they were part of. Then why hide it? I demanded. Why erase files? Why send people to threaten me? His eyes flickered just for a moment, and that was all the answer I needed. Ethan, please, I whispered. If there's still any part of you left that cares about me, tell me the truth. He hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. The truth is, it's too late for both of us. Before I could react, he raised his hand. In it, he held a small black device, the same kind I'd seen in the video. Put the drive on the floor, he said quietly. My heart pounded. If you want it, you'll have to take it. For the first time, his calm cracked. Claire, don't make this harder than it has to be. I backed away toward the kitchen, clutching the flash drive. Then suddenly, a sharp buzz filled the air, like interference, and every light in the house went out. Darkness swallowed everything. And in the black silence, I heard him whisper again. Closer this time. You shouldn't have watched it. A sudden burst of light flared outside the window, headlights, and a car screeched to a stop. Someone shouted my name. Claire. The voice came from outside, urgent, breathless. Through the dark window, I saw headlights cutting through the rain, and a figure running toward the house. It was Dr. Rivas. Ethan turned sharply toward the window, his face momentarily illuminated by the flicker of light. The device in his hand glowed faintly blue. Stay where you are, Dr. Rivas shouted from outside. Ethan's expression shifted, something between anger and fear. You shouldn't have brought her into this, he hissed. Ethan, please, I said, my voice shaking. You don't have to do this.
He took a slow step toward me. You
don't understand, Claire. Everything we've done, everything I've done, was to protect us. Orion doesn't forgive mistakes. Then stop making them, I whispered. Before he could respond, the front door burst open. Dr. Rivas stormed in, a small stun gun in her hand. Get away from her. Ethan turned, but too late. The device discharged, sending a blinding flash through the room. He collapsed, unconscious, the black tool falling from his hand and rolling across the floor. I stood frozen as Dr. Rivas hurried to me. Are you hurt? I shook my head, tears streaking my face. What is happening? Why him? Why us? She glanced at Ethan's motionless body. He wasn't lying about one thing. Orion doesn't forgive mistakes. They'll come for him and for anyone who's seen what's on that drive. I held up the flash drive, trembling. Then we destroy it. Dr. Rivas hesitated.
No.
We use it. The world needs to see what they're doing. She pulled a small, encrypted device from her bag, plugging the flash drive into it. This will send everything to a secure leak network. Once it's out there, they can't hide anymore. The lights flickered again as data began to transfer. The screen displayed. Upload in progress, 78%. Then Ethan stirred, groaning. His eyes opened, dazed but alert. Claire, don't. But it was too late. The upload completed. The screen flashed upload successful before going dark. Dr. Rivas turned to me. You just exposed one of the most powerful research networks in the world. You can't stay here. I nodded numbly. What about him? She looked at Ethan for a long moment, then whispered. He made his choice. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. As we stepped into the rain, I glanced back one last time. Ethan sat motionless on the floor, staring at the flash drive as if it were the last thread of his world unraveling. I didn't look back again. If you were in Claire's place, faced with a truth that could destroy everything, would you expose it to the world or protect the one you love? Tell us what you would do in the comments. Your choice might just decide how the next chapter begins.